This is the Emotional Horsemanship Podcast. I am Lockie Phillips, your host. Emotional Horsemanship coaches deeply caring horse people to train emotionally balanced horses with science, empathy, and feel. And this is the podcast dedicated to exploring all of that within. We try to innovate horse training that puts the horse first. Season 2 of this podcast brings us solo episodes, special guests, and small groups of guests as we discuss horses, horse training, the equestrian industry, and the big, beautiful ideas that horses inspire in us always. Our guest on the podcast today is Shannon Beahen, who is returning for her second visit here. Shannon practices what she calls high vibration horsemanship, a conscious approach to horse-human relationships based on deep attention, free movement, and somatic awareness. Going by the moniker of Humming Horse Equestrian on Instagram and on her website, humminghorse.com, Shannon is a trauma-informed horse trainer, online educator, academic, and writer. She specializes in teaching her own high vibration approach to natural dressage and liberty, as well as the creation of species-appropriate habitats that promote dynamic movement and autonomous equine lifestyles. So that's what she writes on her website, and Shannon is all of that and much, much more. Shannon is someone I'm looking forward to meeting in the future, but I've collaborated with her several times over the years. She's one of the most consistent and peaceful and absolutely productive collaborations I've had online in the professional collaboration space since I started my work. Shannon is someone that I'm passionate about highlighting and amplifying because of her intelligence, her depth of thought, her absolute unique mind, and her passion for putting the horse first in ways which I feel completely in alignment with. This episode goes a lot deeper than the first episode we recorded, as we really looked at some darker things. We spoke about the underworld. We spoke about difficulty. We spoke about navigating things that aren't glossy and shiny and magazine print on the front, but really leaning into those darker elements of horsemanship and how much beauty can reside there. There is no one else other than Shannon who could have had this conversation at this high level than she can. And having seen her work myself, not just observed it from the outside in, I can tell you that her work is not just hot air and big words, but she backs this up with an embodied practice that is second to none. My friends, please welcome Shannon Beahen for the second time. Shannon Beahen, thank you for joining me again.
Thanks for having me.
So we were just chatting off the record and now we jump back on the record. But things are difficult.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
But also things are difficult, period. But also for you right now, things are a little tricky. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go into all the details, but anyone that follows me on social media or even on Substack, I've gestured towards it a little bit. One of my horses has not been doing well for a while. He caught a virus about 4 months ago that hit him really hard. Fever was 42 degrees, about 107 for the non-metric folk. It's a fever that can kill a horse, and he endured that for a while. Of course, we intervened, but that fever was pretty persistent, even despite pharmaceuticals. Long story short, we're 4 months later, and we're still working through. I mean, we are blessed to still have him here, but we're working through a lot of a cascade of issues that have come up in his body as a result of this virus. We jokingly say he's got long COVID, and we don't really know what all the ins and outs of what's going on in his body are. And so we're trying to attend to him in ways that we can without entirely knowing what's going on.
So you and I, who often are presented in our line of work with horses who are in extremis, have also been at that end of the spectrum ourselves personally, not in a service
Yeah.
provider role, but both of us have been present with horses in extremis.
Yeah.
And it's a humbling experience to be in that position.
Mhm.
It's so easy to allow confusion to rule or to feel ashamed that the horse is ill
Oh,
somehow.
yeah.
Has
Oh,
that
yeah.
been an element for you?
Of course. And I think if we're not, I mean, how can that not? That's the shadow side of what a lot of our, people like us, our messaging is. If you just do this and do this and do this. And of course, I definitely champion the line of like naturalness, right? Like give them their species appropriate lifestyle, give them, natural feeding schedules, these kind of things, and all should be good. Nature will take care of them. And of course, I still believe that, but there's so much nuance within that. And, even in nature, even in the most optimal conditions of nature, there's no promises of what bodies are going to do or what environments are going to do to those bodies. So then what?
Then what? I've
Yeah.
I've had to catch myself and a couple of people I work for when they said or we said or I said something along the lines of the body stores trauma as disease.
Mm,
And I've been at that end of the accusatory stick that the
mm.
disease your horses are experiencing can somehow be traced back to trauma that they have experienced in their life or at the hands of yourself, maybe even presently. And there's this wink, wink, nudge, nudge that it's your fault. And that's a very old human condition. It's like, I'm ill because my neighbor next door is a crone kind of attitude.
Right. Or it's kind of like the going back to and thinking of in the early days of like autism diagnoses, there'd be the idea that the mother was frigid.
Ah,
Like it's the mother's fault, and like through time there was different reasoning for what quote unquote caused autism. But of course it came back to like the mother. It was a failure of the caregivers. But of course that's its own kind of like reverse egocentrism of
mm,
like, and we really need to be careful about this, especially on that compassionate end of
the spectrum.
guardianship.
Mm.
Yeah, because like the dominance end is we're going to make a body do what we want a body to do for the sake of performance. And then on like the compassionate and quote unquote compassionate end of things, it's kind of like I'm going to care for this body. I'm going to attend to this body's needs to the best degree, and this body is going to be an expression of
Of my care.
of my devotional caring. And it's still like, hang on a second, like where is the agency of bodies in that? Right, bodies have their own trajectories,
Yes.
and if you think that 100% your care is going to that body is going to be a product of your care,
It's still
you're
the
still
other end.
falling into the trap of I have agency over this body. And where is that body's agency? And I'm sure we've talked about it before because I'm a student of the world of like multiplicity of agencies. That the idea of a singular agency within a being, here we're dropping into the heavy philosophy so early on. I know you're here for it. I know you can
I'm
handle
so
it.
here for it. Go for it.
But we really like it's these traps. It's these old traps of those of us that think we're doing the like progressive work. We think we're in the paradigm shifting end of things. The arrogance that perhaps we or people like us might have, bless us, it's our conditioning, have to think we are not still beholden to our own conditioning. And the conditioning in this case is the idea that we think that we have individual agency that is entirely our own self possession, and that we are always kind of operating from the singular agency, or that our horse is. I'm out there preaching give a horse agency, but it's still a bit of a flawed thought because what is horse agency? And it's like, okay, well, for what other agency could there be? There's all the ecological inputs. There's many things. You and I, before we jumped on the call, we were talking a little bit about digestion. To give it a slightly more technical term, I'll say something like gut dysbiosis, right? So
Right.
this is like when there's an imbalance of the bacteria within the gut. And it's like, okay, so imbalance of the bacteria in the gut, we know that the gut is like populated by these microbes, which are their own kind of intelligences, and they run with their own kind of agendas. And it's like, what about when they get to a critical kind of mass that is
Producing its
it's
own intelligence, producing its
exactly
own intelligence.
with
Right.
its own aims, but
Yes.
that's within the being. So
Right.
we already, that's just one example of where like there is an aim within the thing that we call the body, that we think is singular, already has a multiplicity within it. And that's just one. I often talk to my students about when I'm introducing them to nervous system work, one of the first things you kind of have to wrap your head around, I call the nervous system the animal within the animal. Like the nervous system, um, the protective mechanisms that are autonomic within the being, that kind of come on without thought needing to take place, they have their own agenda to protect. So you can be out there kind of reinforcing certain behaviors, learning theory, and I'm using this term learning theory as separate from autonomic reactions. So you can
Yes.
be teaching them one thing, and indeed, you might have very well reinforced, well established behaviors that you have taught them, that they have learned. So they're like conscious, although we can debate how conscious that is.
Mm.
And then on the other hand, then the nervous system comes up and says, no, actually, I have a different agenda,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you have those agendas within the being competing with each other, right? So the nervous system, maybe it's fear of the mounting block, let's say, but then you're there reinforcing, like, no, it's okay, click, click, treat, treat, stay here. You have these competing urges. So all this to say, we could go down any of these tracks, but all this to say, it's important for us to remember there are competing intelligences, there are multiplicitous intelligences. One of my favorite to talk about is the ecological and the environmental, and what that is doing, what relationships my horses' bodies have with their, every night, I say goodbye to them at night, around 10 o'clock, and I don't see them again till the sun comes up. You think they're just sitting there, just maybe talking to each other a little bit and waiting for me to come out in the morning? Maybe, but I'm pretty sure they have a whole world of relations out there, whether they are physical or nature spirits, depending on where you want to go with this. There are a lot of inputs beyond just us and the artificial environments we create for them. So to come back to, like whether their wellness is a product of our care, we want to just be really careful with that, because if we're going to say that we want bodies to express themselves, you can't only have it in the positive realm
Yep.
and not accept that there's going to be factors and conditions outside of our knowing that have certain trajectories. And the trajectories coming up in my horse right now seem not good. They seem pretty horrible, but also I can't be certain of that. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in his system. I'll pause in a moment because that's a lot to take in, but I just want to kind of introduce an idea here. I've been working on a piece for my Substack, and I'm talking, it's an introduction to what I call like mapping the underworld. And this underworld that I'm speaking of is not like a scary place you don't want to go to, although it is for most people. It's the place you get taken into when things don't go your way. And the reason I'm wanting to map that is because it's like, well, what's my investment in mapping this dimension that we don't want to go to? Why would you want to hang out there? Are you just like sadistic? Are you goth? Are you emo? Do you just like being dark? Are you melancholy? No, it's none of those things. It's because it's its own dimension with its own perceptual,
Intelligence.
yeah, and perceptual gifts. And it would be wise for us as curious and quote unquote paradigm shifting practitioners to question the things that we try to that we avoid going into. I'm being dragged in it by his illness, but his illness is not the first thing that has brought me into this underworld. In fact, all the horses I work with in their own ways, the type of work I do now, the frontier of a yes versus a no. Every no I listen to is a little descent down into the underworld. And the more time I spend down there, it's pretty freaking cool
It's the
if
best.
if you don't resist it. So
Yes.
there's a whole bunch of stuff that we could talk about.
It's amazing. There was an interesting book that came out several years ago by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. The
Right.
Body Holds the Score.
Yeah.
Very catchy title, a really
Yeah.
intuitive concept that you are traumatized, that gets somaticized, and then the tissues become diseased, and that comes out as inflammation, comes out as cancer, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe that in some instances that is the case.
Yeah.
However, more recent developments, if we look at the dogma of science, which it is its own form of dogma, but it's the one dogma that I'll look at with clean eyes, generally speaking.
Yeah.
That the body doesn't hold the score because not all trauma is somaticized. There are plenty of examples of traumatized beings, human, animal, or otherwise, who have been through horrific situations, came out the other end healthy, happy, nothing to speak of. Holocaust survivors living
Yeah.
into their 90s, healthy.
Yeah.
You see,
Yeah.
people surviving SA survivors who come out with healthy, happy, intimate partnerships,
Yeah.
with no diseases of the uterus or of the
Yeah.
whatever. So, to say that your horse is sick because somehow it's also your fault emotionally speaks very, very quickly towards paranoia and anti-intellectualism and
Yeah.
the kind of hysteria that fueled the Salem witch trials in the 1600s, quite frankly,
Yeah.
And so I'm very careful to pull back people from that edge because the body doesn't appear to hold the score. The brain holds a score, if anything. Our brain, our nervous system will
Yeah.
hold a score. The body's just a score card. You might get a line here, a line there, but not all trauma is somaticized. Sometimes disease just happens out of the blue. It just occurs because of
Yeah.
these multiplicities you're talking about. The
Yeah.
gut can become so sophisticated that it's creating things on its own. The way the
Yeah.
cells and the metabolism work, all of these things are so complex. Chaos theory would have us believe that it takes on a life of its own. It's this what I've been speaking to lately with my clients is this concept of the non-local intelligence.
Yes.
And I believe we started talking about it in our first podcast.
Yeah, we did.
We didn't get too deep into it, but this non-local intelligence. I just had a recording with another friend today where we were discussing how training becomes a non-local intelligence to both you and the horse. How if you've done your job with the horse and everything's in place, training becomes this non-local thing that the horses feed into as much as we feed into. The horses apply rigor to it as much as we apply rigor to it. The horses will take it by the shoulders and shake it down for answers as much as we will shake it down for answers. And I've even seen horses decline training in respect of this non-local body of training with reluctance to say no to the training because they have to for whatever reason, but they've actually declining, not because they hate the training, but because they actually love it and they're trying to tend to it and they actually treat it with great reverence. I've seen horses get to that stage. Even if the training was maybe harsh sometimes, I've seen horses treat their training with reverence, even when the training was harsh on them. And that makes my little compassionate horse dude brain do backflips. I'm like, hang on a minute. I need to crunch those numbers. What's going on?
Totally. Yeah. Well, and it just points to a need for, again, like it's a different way of saying a lot of the things that I was saying in our last call. Like, let's just be careful on this end of the spectrum that thinks it's so kind of revolutionary and paradigm shifting. It would be wise for us to remain curious about all paths, including the path of like, dominance and even what's going on there and what works, because not all the horses within that paradigm are miserable.
No.
It sucks for our narrative to agree with that, but you can see that just in watching other people's families or other people's relationships. It's hard to understand what goes on in the depths of other people's relationships. You might look at what you see on the surface and go, oh wow, like that dynamic's really horrible. I don't know how she why does she stay with him, or why does he stay with her? They're so horrible to each other. And yet you check in with them 50 years later and they're still together, and something about it works. And this thing that calls works, who knows what it is that works and why. Having been in the dominance based worlds, I will say that some of what works, quote unquote, works for them. How is it that they're all not just like exhausted by their trauma? If people like me are correct that are out there preaching stuff about trauma, like, and trauma's so bad, how is it that these horses are like not all just like collapsed in their stalls and giving up on life? They aren't. Well, I'd say it comes down to, like, you're talking about the body takes score, and like trauma is held in the body. And I'm less concerned with the traumatic event, like what might have gone on for any body, whether it's a horse or a human body. And I'm more curious around the holding. So we said like the body holds trauma, or like it hangs on to it. So I'm less concerned about the trauma itself, except insofar as I don't want to reproduce it with my own animals. So I want to be aware of like what can be traumatic for a body. It's not always the big events. Sometimes it's little
And it's
events.
relative because some nervous systems will feel a bump in the road and that's enough to send them somewhere
Yeah.
else. And some will stand in the face of the most violent act
Yes.
and it
Yeah.
will wear lightly on them.
Yeah, and I would say like, again, I trained in these worlds. I trained with some very bombastic trainers, and the reason I say bombastic is their intensities, like the energy they brought to a horse was very explosive, electric. It was big energy, right? And that big energy to me, through my eyes now, reads as a kind of violence, and I think it was a kind of violence. But the flip side of it that worked for some horses is that those trainers, these bombastic trainers, their bodies were very comfortable with high intensity. And
Mm.
if you watch, like I can think of some now. They're trainers that I wouldn't train in their style, but you watch how their body talks to the other body. And it's kind of like how skateboarders skateboard, or how like Red Bull athletes do their thing. There's no brace. Like I don't know how they do it, but they're doing these like immense, like adrenaline causing activities, but their body isn't bracing. And then there's like kind of a therapeutic message that goes through to the horse of like, yeah, we're going through this really intense thing, whether it's like prepping for a big passage, like a powerful passage, or whether it's trying to get them over a 6 foot jump cleanly. In either case, the artfulness that kind of exceeds beyond our ideas of dominant, not dominant, is like the lack of brace. And I'm bringing this back to this idea of like holding, the body holds. So it's not just the trauma that's the issue, it's the pattern of holding. Like, how much are you restricting? There can be good events happening in a being's life, and you're restricting. I
I,
think of like the Woody Allens of the world, like Larry Davids of the world, these people that like refuse to just be, and I'm not talking about Woody Allen and his like legacy as a predator. I'm talking about just like his legacy as like a bit of a
a,
curmudgeon about life.
a kook.
Yeah, that means something different over here.
Oh, okay.
But just like kind of like negative about life, right? Like can't let the happiness in, can't let the sunshine in. Is always kind of like restricting, restricting, restricting. And so, I mean, we're talking about a lot of things here, but to me, that's a relevant thing, is like life is coming in. How much are we able to let life in, or go too much? And how
Mm.
much does, if there's a lot of too much, it becomes a shutting down. So
I've
I don't
seen
know. Yeah.
I've seen horses handled by people who come with only the most compassionate intentions,
Yeah.
only the most well informed, meticulously mentally orchestrated approach to present to the horse their most perfect, precious pearl of handling. And here we
Yeah.
go. And they present it to the horse, and the horse goes, and the horse takes it only
Yeah.
as heaviness, an
Ah.
enormous
Mm-hmm.
heaviness. And the
Right.
horse says, I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm so safe. I'm
Uh-huh.
so safe. I'm
Uh-huh.
so safe. I'm so safe. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
so safe. And the
Uh-huh.
person's like, and waiting for the horse to sprightly give them the response that they've fantasized and
Uh-huh.
led to believe, perhaps by people like you and me,
Uh-huh.
that will occur with these wonderful intentions and these fabulous sparkly tools that they apply through their passion. And there it is. And it's just like dead in the water, dead
Yeah.
in the water. Because often, if you scratch the surface of these people and the anatomy that brought them to that place, the emotional biomechanics, I say with my tongue in my cheek, the emotional
Uh-huh.
biomechanics that brought them to that place, scratch the surface, you'll find a trainer in their not too distant history who said to them, bring your energy up. And what that
Right.
really was about a visceral emotional violence that the person brought to the horse without any brace. But they didn't
Yeah.
say, oh, don't brace. They just gaslit and said, don't be afraid. And the person says, what do you mean I'm afraid? Which created
Yeah.
brace. So the person's
Yeah.
kind of rejected this notion that you can have your engines running, that you can
Yeah.
be with your revs without brace, and the horse can assimilate with that. So instead, they take all brace, add this amorphous, foggy softness to it,
Yeah.
and say, would you like my brace wrapped in fog? And the horse says, absolutely not. Absolutely
Totally.
not.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not. And I've experimented with different strategies to bring about change in such a nervous system. Different
Yeah.
strategies. One strategy would be to softly describe to them an exit strategy. So
Mm.
finding a clear edge and following that clear edge, a little bit like looking for a guideline in the fog. Find that. So, for example, if someone's trying to lead their horse softly and the horse isn't leading, it's like, okay, well, what do you know to be true? Literally find the rope and really feel the rope in your fingers. And can you feel the horse's concentration in your fingers? Just follow that. Don't think about what their feet are doing and the fact that they're not leading. Just follow the weight in your fingers, or and sort of give them that approach. That approach tends to be the most gentle, but for some people that's inadequate, because what that will do is actually feed the fog. It'll feed
Mm-hmm.
the flame of this brace that's enshrouded in this extremely
Yeah.
complex upper functioning sort of
Yeah.
abstraction. And with such a person, you need to, in my experience, what needs to happen is we need to ask of them, of ourselves, and in togetherness, the simple question, and hold them for a simple answer, a yes or a no.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be amazed how difficult it is to find a yes or a no when you're in that state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very, very
Yeah.
difficult. Your
Mm-hmm.
nervous system will reject it. Ask a yes or no question and ask them to stay on it until they find a yes or a no.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
very uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah. And, to me, it comes down to, because again, to just keep locating us at this end of like the so-called, like, oh, we're doing the good work of the compassionate horsemanship. Like, on that end of things, I do find that people come laden with a lot of ideas because there's new ideas circulating. I mean, it's still relatively new. It's not new to be kind to an animal, but there are like our actions and our
It's
culture is
new to be kind,
preceded by ideas.
right? And
Yeah.
it's new to be extremely kind to horses in training and have that be normal. That would be new.
And the level of like even just denormalizing our right to just as a default be able to sit on their backs. That's pretty new. you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then let alone all the little nuances of reading body language within that, and what is consent and what isn't, what is a trauma response and what isn't, and what is an appeasement response that looks like consent but it isn't really consent because it's actually just them trying to diffuse the situation to calm down the predator so the predator isn't so extreme, you being the predator. So what I find on this end of the spectrum is a lot of people come laden with a lot of ideas and not enough in touch with, I mean, this is not news, with their body. And I
Right.
mean, I got to find other ways to say this because that isn't news. Yeah, sure. We're not embodying enough. Great. What does that mean? How do we get more in the body? Well, I mean, I'm loving storytelling for this kind of thing. I mean, also live lessons where you're helping people feel, as
Right.
you were describing through the rope. That's obviously helpful. But when we don't have the ability to be in person with each other, like I do love storytelling to just kind of distinguish the nuance of what a relational interaction from the body, as opposed to just our ideas of things. Because even I'm finding this idea of like yeses and nos, and what is consent. Consent comes back to this idea of agency, right? Like it's as if, because this idea of like get consent from your horse, it's as if the horse is sitting there knowing, like they already know in advance, like I will do this, I will do this, I will do this. You see this on TV sometimes, these sexual interactions that are about to happen, and they're being really like kind of woke about the situation. Like, okay, we're gonna have sex. Like, what's on the table and what isn't on the table? It's like, I don't know how you all operate, not to get too personal, but like to me, it's a by the moment thing. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that is complex and it does make things confusing about like, well, was it a yes? Did they want it? Did they not want it? The more I'm more into the nuance. Like we need to just get, and this is kind of the underworld again. Like
Well,
it's
I live in the
really,
underworld. I live in the
yeah,
underworld. I'm there. I've had people decline being on the podcast because they don't want to go down to those places. But
right.
as you alluded to, I find that in those places it's not dark. It's only dark to the uninitiated, the
Yeah,
people who haven't gone there or who've just dipped a toe in, but not all the
yeah,
way. That
yeah.
does feel dark because there is a shift to it. But like you said, there is so much awareness and there's so much perception that can be perceived in this place where we align with these shadow sides to some of these
Hmm.
questions. I mean, the thing that is irritating me about consent, and when I say irritation, it means that this is how my brain works. When I'm irritated on something, it's my body, my nervous system telling me to
Hmm.
pay attention to that.
Yeah,
Pay
lovely,
attention to that.
lovely.
It's
Yeah.
irritating. It's like, oh, I just can't. It's like a stone in my shoe. I can't just leave it alone.
Hmm.
It's like there, I nod to it. I say, okay, thank you very much. I'm aware of you. And I move on and it just keeps coming back. And it's like, nope, still
Yeah.
here. Pay attention to me. So, what's irritating me about consent is this notion that consent is somehow wrapped up in preferences, specifically first preferences. Now, that denotes or alludes to the understanding or implies that the first preference is what the horse wants or
Hmm.
what the horse needs, or that
Hmm.
the horse is incapable of changing their preferences, or it
Yes.
also totally ignores the possibility that preference is conditioned largely, not entirely, but conditioned by lived experiences, usually potentially unpleasant experiences that you
Hmm.
survived, and you will prefer what you survived as
Yeah,
opposed to
totally.
something new. So, for example, what this looks like is a horse who has been yanked on too much on the
Hmm.
halter.
Yeah.
Now, every time someone like us picks up the lead rope, just very gently say, "Might you come with me?" The horse pulls against it and gives all the obvious, let's say, vulgar signs that they hate
Hmm.
it. And
Yeah.
so someone who's just beginning their journey of diving deep into these shadow parts will say, "Oh, the horse hates it," or my horse
Hmm.
hates that halter. And I say,
Yeah,
it's not so cut and dry. Actually, the
totally.
horse is telling you that they've survived something worse than what you're doing. And how they
Hmm.
survived it was by pulling against it. So it's push
Yeah,
pull. And what you're
yeah.
supposed to do is actually go, heard you. I'm going to go there again.
Yeah,
I'm actually going to go there again and show you another preference. You
totally.
don't know what you
Yeah,
like until you've tasted it sometimes. I
yeah,
hated pistachio ice cream until I tried it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Or pad thai till you actually went to Thailand and had pad thai.
Hello,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, exactly. It drives me crazy when people say, "Oh, this horse doesn't like ring work," or this. It's the where's the curiosity? And to me, this is again what I mean by like the underworld. Like when we're taking anything as a given or like a boundary threshold, and then we're just going, "Oh, well, that's how it is, so let's just stay above ground on this. Let's just not go into that thing." Even what you're talking about consent, like sounds like you have an aversion to this term, but you're not leaving it alone. You
No.
have an aversion to it because it is messy. And I think any of us that are trying to talk about it cleanly is like, that's the wrong way. Um, I'll give another example of just like it's a slightly different angle change on this idea of consent, and also what I'm saying as this thing about coming too much in the head, even if what we're coming with in the head is an idea of being in the body or an idea of being consensual. Like we have no idea how us humans, as supercomputing modern beings, constantly kind of re-articulate everything as a conceptual idea. We need to remember nature does not have concepts, not even species. Like, not even species is a fixed concept for nature. Like, it's really hard for us to wrap around the idea of the organizational categories of nature. And even this word nature is a problematic term. It's already a category.
Oh my
But
God.
like, categories are not fixed
I'm
within.
actually going to gently disagree with you with percentage. With
Okay,
percentage.
sure.
So
Yeah,
it's not a carte blanche disagree. It's
yeah,
an addition of nuance.
sure.
One nuance will be I love consent. As an
Mhm.
SA survivor myself, consent is
Yes.
very important to me.
Yes.
What irritates me is the interpretation of consent in horsemanship that lacks all nuance and lacks all learning. That really
Hmm.
irritates me. That's
Hmm.
like somehow consent is this realm where learning, development, and the development of preference and the changing of a preference is now impossible. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
it's
Yes.
not impossible in 100% circumstances. What I found really interesting looking at some pretty heady white papers towards the end of last year is that emotion, which is my wheelhouse, tends to work in a conceptual way,
Hmm.
probably across the board. It's not
Hmm.
universal concepts that are born into the brain, as
Hmm.
Panksepp would have us believe, and that I
Yeah.
espoused for a while. The concepts are developed after birth. The neurological wiring is in place, but the actual shaping of that wiring occurs through
Yeah.
life. Horses can develop a concept
Hmm.
based on feeling, based on perception, based upon experiences, and then start to lump things in that category. So I've
Yeah.
seen horses look at a saddle pad they've never seen before. I've got a
Hmm.
horse at home who has been exposed to mostly dressage numbness and cloths all his life. When I
Hmm.
showed him a trekking pad with sheepskin and inserts, he said, "What is that? What
Hmm.
is that?" And when I put it on
Yeah.
his body, he went, "Oh, this is something new." See, because his concept lacked nuance, his
Yes.
concept lacked variation. He hadn't been exposed to a variety of saddle
Sure.
pads. He'd
Sure.
had
Sure.
one type
Yeah.
of saddle pad all his life. So when I
Yeah. Yeah.
exposed him to these little 2, 3 degrees of difference, that 3 degree of difference is sometimes more repulsive than an entirely new thing
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
altogether. And that's what we're all kind of grappling with. It's like,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. And so thank you for that. I guess what I want to say is understanding the difference between linguistic concepts,
Ah,
like we're taught in school, like,
abstract, human.
and it's typically fixed and abstract.
Mm,
Although I think even in the example you gave, I mean, we could get into this, but I think there's still an abstraction to a degree for
mm,
the horse because they lump
mm.
it. Oh, this is white and goes on back, and but I think the difference there is like their conceptual kind of construction is probably always going to connect back to a lived experience and to a
Yes.
felt sense.
Yes.
And like you said, a categorization based on I survived it or I didn't.
Yes.
So to readjust that statement, it's not that they don't have concepts, but to understand that linguistic concepts can survive entirely in the abstract without a person can become an expert in a topic without ever having experienced the lived felt sense experience of this thing that they're a so-called expert in. Whereas the way the animal in this case is forming the concepts is through the felt sense and through these very kind of like, I lived through it or I didn't live through it, or it felt warm and safe or it felt cold and fearful. And then we might add things like, oh, there was like adrenaline or cortisol. But of course, they're not going to think adrenaline or cortisol. They're going to know the feeling. And
Right.
therefore, they're actually the experts on adrenaline and cortisol, because how many of us that can say we know those terms actually know, like, ooh, one spikes hard and is cold in the body, and the other kind of distributes through the body like an electrical current, and it's got kind of like a warm, hot edge to it, because that's how the animal is going to know it. So I'll just get back to this little story for a second. Again, it's what we're talking about, but a little bit different, to just kind of impress upon anyone who's still listening, uh, kind of the dangers of being in the head. So like, so I was working with an online client, a new online client, and it's so lovely in her curiosity and her desire to do well by horses. Um, and so she was working with a horse, not her own, where when she'd come into its stall, it would nudge her with its nose, and it started to get very aggressive, like nudge her and like kind of throw her. And so we brought this up in our online call, and so she was really concerned with what it meant. She was really concerned with kind of like looking at the horse and being like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, and she's trying to do the thing that people like me are teaching her to do, like to read context and like, is it a yes or is it a no? She's doing the thing. But of course, this is still a new kind of teaching platform and messaging for people like you and I. So it used to be enough to say, pay attention to yeses and nos. Now I still say that sometimes, but I'm way more in the minutia, because a yes can become a no and a no can become a yes in microseconds. And I'll also just mark here, like I've written in the past about consent. The etymology on consent is feeling with. So we're trained in like, the sexual realm or relational sexual realm, intimacy realm, to view consent as a binary, right? Like a hard binary. It's yes or it's no. But I love remembering this feeling with, because the feeling with is so in the moment. So here she is she's every nudge she got from this horse, she's just more in the realm of meaning making around what are you trying to tell me? As if the horse is sitting there with like an automated like AI, like, what's the next word you want to say? Like, here's what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to say. Like, the horse isn't necessarily sitting there with a precognized message in its head that is trying to translate to the human and say, do you get it? They're so in the moment. So, to be honest, I don't want to stop her desire or curiosity around what is a horse trying to say. I'm not advising against that. But to me, it's the wrong stance to take in that moment, because there's more immediate phenomenological, physiological kind of
Shifts that
exchange
have to happen in the moment.
that need to happen in the moment. So my question to her, and this is not at all to fault her if she's listening, because it's such a beautiful example. And again, her desire was so pure to try and do what I myself have taught, that I said, so I broke it down. Okay, tell me, like where on your body was he pushing you? Okay, like it was kind of in the solar plexus. Okay, and tell me, like, what parts of his body were doing it, and like what level of force was it like throwing you backwards, or was it just a little, something? It was throwing me backwards. Okay, like, so you were thrown off balance. Yeah, I was thrown off balance. Okay, That's the first thing I'd want to attend to, is that there's been, forget meaning making. Let's just attend to the physics. One body encountered another body, and one body threw the other body off balance. I don't give a crap about what they meant. I care about the physics. So did you take time to recover your balance? I don't know if I did.
That's
You know, like I
maybe
think
why
I
the
came,
horse was shoving her.
I
This
think
is
I just
probably the
came
lesson.
right back in because I think I was so preoccupied with kind of staring at them and being like, what are you trying to say?
Damn.
Here's the other thing. Did it hurt you? So you said it hit you in the solar plexus, maybe even a little bit in the breast. Did it hurt you? We took time to talk about that. Did it hurt me? Did it hurt me? And I am not at all faulting this person, because I think so many people override physiological sensations, their own. Forget even the horse. We're not even talking about the horse. What about you? So the horse did something to you, to your body. Did you take any time to feel that sensation in your body? No fault on her. I think a lot of us do this.
Let's take a break. Something a lot of horse people struggle with, that I see, is understanding pressure. We don't understand it very well. I say pressure, someone hears abuse. I say pressure, some people say pressure under, pressure over, under pressure, over-pressured. We have these deep negative connotations with pressure because, frankly, we live in an over-pressurized world. We almost need a new word for this. But instead of becoming lost on semantics and re-languaging everything, which I think is a fast way to the middle, I'm seeking to reclaim this word and to reclaim it in our horsemanship so that our language with our horses can be something more than this ethical prison we've built for ourselves, where we all passively agreed that this middle softness of pressure is the only thing that is harmless to horses, which is so not the case, and is leaving a lot of talented and well-intentioned horse people stuck in a rut, unable to proceed, and we're losing horses to this problem. So, Homecoming 3.0 is a 13-week group coaching program where you will join me personally and my team, where we will look at the issue of pressure. We're going to look at your hands, your heart, and your body. We're going to look at leverage. We're going to look at whips and bits, sticks and arm extenders. We're going to look at dressage. We're going to look at high energy activities on the ground and under saddle. How to ask a horse to work maybe a little bit harder. How to create a situation in training where a horse applies themselves to a difficult physical task without using pressure that feels like force. This is a dead end so many of us deeply caring horse people have landed upon and don't know how to get out of. Well, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I've found a few, and I've certainly gotten out of it and gotten several people out of it. I haven't actually been in it, and I'm inviting you to join me as I show you how to develop pressure as a language, non-escalating pressure, meaning pressure that doesn't force horses or dominate them for a performance, but seeks to communicate with them towards a result. All horse people are welcome. I really want you to be there if you want to be there. I have a couple of videos on YouTube that are describing this program, and I have financial aid available. So if you cannot afford the full price, I still have some financial aid available. Sign up continues now from July until September 15th, which is the day that we start. If you can afford to enter at the full cost, that means you are helping me offer financial aid to somebody else. We are standing with each other as a community through this recession and maintaining our education, maintaining our horsemanship, and maintaining community. Come and join me and my team. Also, I'm going to tell you here first, I'm about to introduce a brand new team member to to emotional horsemanship, and those who are in Homecoming 3 are going to meet them first. This is so exciting. This is really positive news. Can't wait to see you there. So, if you'd like to join us, the link is in the show notes of this episode. You can also go to emotionalhorsemanship.com and navigate to the Homecoming 3.0 page at the top of the navigation menu. And now, let's return to my episode here with my friend, the incomparable Shannon Beahen.
I think so many people override physiological sensations, their own. Forget even the horse. We're not even talking about the horse. What about you? So the horse did something to you, to your body. Did you take any time to feel that sensation in your body? No fault on her. I think a lot of us do this. She, bless her, took quite a bit of time to really take the question in. That's now we're getting closer to the kind of methodology I'm to take time for it to land. Let it move through your body. I don't think I did. And I actually I think there was an emotional component to it too. Like if that was a human, it felt like I'd walked up to the human and they yelled at me. And I think I totally didn't even take time to feel the emotional feeling. Whether the horse yelled at you or not, that is how her body perceived it. And there was no time for that to move through her body before she went back into the situation to try and uncover the question, what does he mean? I need more information. What does he mean? You don't need more information. Feel the physics first. And in particular, just to keep it simple, keep it so simple so that people don't even ever have to learn anything about trauma science or neurology or any of these things or ethology. Did you recover your balance? And did you have that balance in your body before you went in for the next encounter? Because personally, if I then now had to retrospectively try to guess what he was trying to tell you, but I don't even think that's what this is about, I would say he was trying to get you to be a being who's balanced in their body because he didn't want to be. You were one of those topply, I don't know if you remember these toys from the 80s. They were like bottom heavy and you just topple
Yes.
them and they go back up. And it's kind of, funny but infuriating because they just have no kind of center, And it's who wants to be in relationship with a being with no center? Well, some people do. I mean, that's where fascism comes from, is you totally there is no center, right? The center is the being at the top. But if what we're trying to produce when we say consent is what we really mean is two beings that are in their center, and neither being is too much pushing the other one over emotionally, physically, philosophically. To me, that's something closer to consent. And then that's something that lives in the body. And it's actually a lot easier to calculate. And this isn't even the Vessel Bander.
Bessel van der Kolk.
Thanks. I'm messing up the B's and the V's. It's not even the body trust stored in the trauma, blah, which I am really into, but we can even simplify it further. Just start. Are you not even the question are you in your body or not? Which is a question I ask, and it's a bit unfair. How do you know?
How do you know?
How do you really know?
Nothing
But
makes
one would be
people
to start
less
with
in their body than that
Yeah,
question.
than that question. Yeah. Or the accusation. Oh my God, they're so disembodied, right?
Right.
But let's just start with these simple things. More and more, my cues are trying to come back to, are you balanced or are you imbalanced? Did that imbalance already, was that already happening in you before you even came to the horse? Then let's spend some time working with you before we bring the horse in.
And what I explored as a dancer that I loved the most, and anytime I got access to choreographers skilled enough in balance, that they had a advanced skill set around balance and would choreograph that. Are you in balance? Are you out of balance? The real juicy stuff lives. Are you in balance when you're out of balance? That's the real juice. Can you go completely off your leg without grace and return to it? if you want to look at really good turners, right? So
Yeah.
Tamara Rojo is an example. She was a
Uh,
Spanish prima ballerina of the Royal Ballet. She's now the director, I believe, of the San Francisco Ballet. And maybe somewhere else as well. Maybe she's still at the English National. Anyway, she could turn for days on her toes, not
mhm.
because she was in balance, but because she frequently came off it and was able to recover. So she was in balance even when she was off. If you look at the postmodern neoclassical choreographer William Forsythe,
Oh,
and I was
this is
present,
getting me so excited to look at these choreographers.
I was present in the premiere of William Forsythe's first premiere in Eastern Europe. The first time his works had been presented in Eastern Europe, I was on the stage. And he's
Yeah.
big deal. This guy's a big deal. His work would take the classical form and then stretch it off balance and have the dancers
Ooh.
stay there and then
Ooh.
continue. And things which should be done
Yeah.
slowly, he would have you do it insanely quickly. And then things that should be done quickly, he would have you do them stupid slow. And then
Wow.
he'd give you music that had no clear structure to it. So it's not a 4 4 4. It would be, the counts would be
Oh my God.
9, a 3, a 1, a 1, a 1, a 12, a 10, a 3, a 3.
Ah.
It was really super stuff. And when you've experienced that with your body, not
Mhm.
only are you in your body, I'm no longer in my body looking for balance. I'm not looking
Yes.
for center. I'm looking to
Ah.
decenter myself. I'm not
Yeah.
looking to be self centered around horses. And this horse may be shoving this person saying, are you centered when I push you? Because God knows if you're going to ride me and I trip,
Uh-huh.
I need to know that you're not going to trip when I trip. One
Yeah.
of us has to stay in the technique. Can you be in your body even when your body is under stress, even when your
Yeah.
body is asking to be stretched? Because horsemanship stretches us and the horses. Life,
Yeah. Yeah.
life,
Well,
disease, health stretches us.
exactly. And so, I mean, this is, we live on the coast of Canada, the surf culture here, and from a movement kind of um, perspective and all movement, you're bringing in the example of choreographers, all of us would be wise to just kind of study movement in its various forms, in particular those that are playing with form, right? Playing with, the classical forms are all about like purity and yeah, purity of proportion, purity of balance, purity of unity of shape, which is still something. I think it's important to kind of learn those forms before we deviate from them. Otherwise, then it's just, like jazz in its improvisational form. We joke in this household about a friend's mother who said, "Oh, it just sounds like they're practicing." It's like jazz. It just sounds like, in other words, like they haven't kind of gotten to their perfection moment when it's like, no, no, no. Like jazz in that form understands perfection and is stretching it and playing with it. And your ear can't hear that if you haven't understood kind of the stop points in between. Where was I going with this? Dynamic equilibrium is the word that I was going to relate back to surfers, and why I think watching surfers and even attempting to ever surf is so interesting because like the relational object you're in relationship with is the ocean, and it's so dynamic. And so you have to be balanced enough to not fall off the board, but so able to stretch ideas of balance. I'll say another thing to like bring it back to something like tangible take home for anyone who might be listening and how to even land some of these concepts in their practice. I used to watch, like, I'd be doing some simple thing with a student, like something fairly static. Like, I do a lot of deconstructing movement, not just for movement's sake, but because I really want to kind of breathe air into the micro choreography of the relationship to kind of see like what is the moment, like, okay, so you're standing still with the horse, let's say halter on, lead rope in hand, and things seem good. Oh, do you feel like you have connection? Yeah, it feels like I have connection. Does it feel like you're calm and breathing in your body? Yeah, it feels like I'm calm and breathing in my body. Does it feel like your horse is calm and breathing? Yeah, calm and breathing in their body. Yeah, we're harmonious. Great, great, great. So we can say for all intents and purposes we have harmony. Great. But at some point we lost it. So are you able to catch? Where did you lose it? So I do a lot of kind of deconstructing movement, deconstructing the choreography of like kind of habituated gestures in the body for asking for things, so we can kind of catch where did it change, where did it change, where did it shift, and in the process we bring more awareness into the body. So I would do a lot of things where like I'd be like, okay, here, see, like give me your horse here. Used to do a lot of give me your horse type teaching. Give me your horse type teaching. I'll show you how to do it, and then you
Can't
can
do
watch.
that when you teach online, right? That
You can. It's really
changes the way you teach.
it's
So
such
much
a
better.
beautiful learning curve.
Yes.
It gets me out of their business. You know? And I
Yes.
used to love watching my coaches get, well, there's two really beautiful coaches that I had that I used to love watching. I'd love it when my coach would say, get off, I'm getting on. Because I was like, we're about to watch,
The
you
master.
know, the master. Yeah. And I had like, I'm very good at receiving things both visually but through osmosis. Like it's like once the imprint is in the environment, like I can now kind of feel it. But I know that for a lot of people that doesn't help. It just frustrates them more because it's like, oh great, you can do it, I still can't. So yes, it is nice to teach online for those reasons. But so here's something I would observe. So I'd go in, I'd do it, then I'd give it back to them, and I'd kind of see what kind of choreographic instruction was missing. I'd be like, oh no, you kind of got to do it a little more like this. And bless them. So I'm thinking of the scenarios where the student would do exactly what I was saying. Exactly. And then I did just oh, it's still not quite. So I just, so I got the choreography so that they seem to be doing exactly what I'm doing. Still not working. And so then we talk about intention and, oh, bringing the energy up, and still not working. So there are all kinds of reasons it can still not be working in that moment. But here's one that I really caught on to that just blew my mind and really is often a missing ingredient. As they'd step, as they'd, let's say, take their weight off one foot to go into the next foot to do the movement for whatever, let's say you're asking to move the shoulders over, something kind of a micro movement. But it's in that moment where there was the weight shift from one foot to the next, let's say on the human part, I'd start to see there was no balance across their step. They didn't have enough kind of, we can examine whether these are the right words in a moment or not, but let's say integrity in the balance. Some people might say, oh, you need to develop your core more or something like, you don't fucking need to develop, pardon me, your core more. Okay. Like maybe, but probably not. You probably need to develop it less. You need to find more the elasticity is what you need to do. And part of that elasticity is going to come from, on a philosophical level, it would be holding the possibility of two different realities at once in the same moment. What that translates to at the physical level is they'd be committing too much to the reality of the one foot that they were switching to and had already kind of abandoned the next foot. And where that became a problem for the horse is because it would kind of say to the horse, I'm not flexible for what you're going to choose in this space where I'm about to switch from one to the next. And the horse would go, no, I'm not going to do it. But when I would give the instruction that would say, can you find a balance between, because by the time they shift to the one foot, they're in the one reality of what they're asking the horse to do. Whereas let's say the back foot would be the prior reality. So the two options. Their balance was saying to the horse, I'm insisting on this option. And the horse could read the two options were no longer still open, but yet the person thought they were being this real, like, being soft. And it's like, yeah, you're being soft. In some cases, you're being too soft, but you're rigid in your movement and the horse doesn't trust it. The horse can feel you're going to now be stuck in the reality. And if they change anything, you're going to be totally off and going to become discombobulated. So we would practice, can you, from foot to foot, my partner is a Tai Chi practitioner. He calls it never step in. He's going to probably correct me if he hears this later. Never step into empty space. So like you never commit to the next step you're taking without still having some balance on the opposite foot. And what that translates to in movement is elasticity and suppleness. And yeah, that's great. we all know from dressage, we're supposed to have elasticity and suppleness. But I guess what I'm proposing here is that there's a flexibility of like, there's a quantum flexibility in terms of like, and this does relate back to consent. And it also relates back to kind of an enmeshment piece that I'm always kind of preaching to my students around. It's not just you have to take care of yourself first before you attend to the other. It's some of that. You know, I've had people that like, I'll be stepping down, like hiking or something, and a man will reach up and like offer to like take my weight as I step down off the tricky rocks, right? I'm not too much of a feminist to not say yes to that. Sure, yeah, okay, big strong man, I'll take your hand when, but you better make sure you have the ability to hold my weight. I'm
There
not
we
a
go.
big person.
There it is.
Before you offer me
That's
your
right.
help. And I
That's
think
right.
there's a lot of people out there offering something that they have not yet established as a foundation in themselves to
Ooh.
offer, and the horse can feel that. And I
Ooh.
guess the example of the balance in the feet is to say, for every concept I'm introducing here in the mind, there's a physical correlate that is very palpable. It's not that abstract. And that if we could see, just like those choreographers can, this ability to stretch these forms, there are corrections that we as instructors could make. But I think we can simplify it more to just be down to like, are you feeling what's in yourself before you ask for something from the other? And are you in a position to ask for this something from the other when you're not ready to receive the outcome of that thing you're asking for in your own body?
It's a huge work, and it can be read as potentially read by the horse as a lameness in us, a physical infirmity. It's like I
Totally.
remember there were some dancers whom, when you watch them from the front of the proscenium,
Yeah.
gorgeous, gorgeous from the front. Watch them from side stage, and you're like,
Interesting.
so you're not actually using the weight according to where it should be. And that's why certain aspects of your work sort of plateau. You're great, but certain aspects of your work will plateau because you're actually not using your en dehors properly in that place, and you've got your QF is held out, and you're only sort of projecting on the frontal plane of the body. I remember several times at a clinic, I've asked people to play with the front and back plane of their body. You can do it in the saddle. In the saddle, it's easy. I was in Northeast Wyoming, and I asked everyone to ride around cowboy style, kind of hunched over a little bit on their frontal plane. So the points of their shoulders, points of their nose, kind of hunched over the saddle horn a little bit, and not slouching. They're upright, they're balanced, but the uncontrolled trending of the weight and the physics falling through their body trends onto that frontal plane. And then I said, now ride pretty. Pretend you're someone, and they all put their shoulders back, and now they're trending towards the back plane. And I said, just play with that front and back. Another one I've used is ask people to walk alongside their horse, imagining they've got a tire tied to their pelvis and they're dragging the tire. So that there's a feeling of weighted support. And watch them change how they walk. And at first they go, oh, it feels really weird. And I say, I'm coming to help you. And so I would ask permission to touch. And then I would hold the back of their sweater and add some resistance to their body as they move forward, so they could feel what it was like to be back supported and in the back of you while you're moving forward. Like if a horse sees you abandon where you were as you're entering to where you want to be.
Exactly. That's exactly
it. Reads as lameness. It reads as a trip and a tumble forward and a lack of physical balance on their behalf. And they are physically precocious in their movement skills from birth. We need to like develop that. We are the squishy, naked,
well, and it
hairless
tells
monkeys,
them,
right?
it sends the relational message of you're responsible for my lack of coordination. And they don't want that responsibility. No wonder they're not moving. They're actually doing it to help you. And then you're sitting there going like, why won't they move? And so all these little shifts that you're talking about that you play with, whether they're like visual prompts, ride like the cowboy, or whether they're physical
Somatic,
prompts, that
whatever.
feeling of the sweater, these are these are kind of like somatic expansions of your center of gravity that gives kind of more neurological feedback to expand. We can become fixed in the mind, but we're of course fixed in the body. And to bring this back to like my Ivan and what's going on with him, I've gone through all the phases. When your early questions in this call was like, oh, you like, are you feeling some of that shame around like, oh, is it you? Of course. How do I not go through the shame of like, is it something I've missed? Is it something I've done? But here's the beauty. This thing is lasting for so long with him. It's got its ups and downs within it. I've got a lot of time to self-examine. So I've kind of come out of the acute stage of like self reproachment and beating myself up around what did I miss? What did I do? I'm now quite confident I've brought in enough other modalities to be like, if maybe it was me, but also I can let myself off the hook. Like, I'm only one being. Like, I'm a humble human being floating through this modern, confusing moment in history. I'm only one being. I'm trying my effing best. So there's a lot that's out of my control. What have all my lessons in training, you and I are talking about like, let's say being in the saddle or like these more kind of training, not quite performance, but like able-bodied things. Now I'm talking about health thing, the lack of at the body in its kind of disabled form. What I still know, what I come back to is still kind of the same lesson. And it's like, am I losing my center as he is going through his health crisis? Because I know that if I become really unhinged, that's not going to help anyone. So I'm trying to find my balance, but I've kind of got a new balance point because of this, because my new balance point has to now factor in, when he's well, my balance point doesn't need to stretch that far. When we're in the grand, glorious glow of, aren't we great caregivers that give them these natural lifestyles and really listen to their needs and like know how to read nervous systems and attune? And that's a grand, glorious glow to wake up to every morning. I've been there too. But the kind of my gravitational center isn't called on that much to stretch. It beautifully gets to hang out in this really nice glowy place of all is well. What's going on now and 4 months into it, I'm really sensing into my new gravitational center, which has a much bigger orbit of potential catastrophe on any given day. It's hard. I mean, I guess this is what people call resilience, but I don't want to collapse it by giving it that simple of a term. Oh, yeah, all those times that you were stretched through crisis and you survived, you gained resilience. Oh, fuck off. Like, don't reduce the experience to such a just a easy word, because what I've gone through in that like big stretch that I'm still in, but I am finding a new equilibrium within it. The new equilibrium being, I don't know what crisis I don't know if there's going to be a midnight emergency vet call. I don't know if it's going to be all the things that can happen. I'm in the underworld, but the going down into the underworld is giving me a larger gravitational center. It might also totally topple me over and lead to crisis, but that's what the 4 months, this is what like, it's a gift still.
But when you play with balance, this is what happens. And what I want people to know about balance and about center is that center and balance is something that can and should move, be mobile, and that you take with you. And the question now, maybe for you to discover, Shannon, is, am I on the forehand right now with Ivan, or am I collected? Which one is this? Is this like, are we back in something that's original balance and it needs to kind of come back into collection? Or is this state actually me and him shifting our weight onto the metaphoric hindquarters, ready for what comes next? You don't know.
I think it's even neither of those. I think we're still in like this autonomous movement, experimental, improvisational jazz. It sounds like they're practicing, like I think we're still in the, we're here, we're there, we're here, we're there. And
it's
I'm going,
moving. Where is it?
It's really moving. And in it, it's like stretching what I previously knew as balance. And each of them is at risk of still me toppling, right? But fortunately, bless this horse, what I've seen, because then there's like kind of like your average of balance. And what I've been surprised by with him is, wow, like here's the plus side to what I've gotten to see, is he's gone to the what I would have thought was the edge of the underworld or even the afterlife so many times that my body was reading it as catastrophic. I'm losing him. He's about to be gone. And my body is prepping for that. And it's holy shit and all the stuff that comes with it. Preparatory grief, anticipatory grief, prolonged, which is like chronic stress. But if I really step back, what I'm looking at is like, and this is where it's so important to have deeper connections with your horse, because you won't be able to have this measure when you go into catastrophe with them, is if I check in on connection, if I check in on all my kind of like signs of, is he still in his body, quote unquote, in his body, or is he leaving this body? Is he still available for relation? Is he still available for connection? Yes, he is. How many kind of like nodes of connectivity is he available for? Of course, less than usual, but how many nodes? There's a lot. There's a lot. Like if there's a switchboard, there's still a lot lighting up on his switchboard. And I'm going, maybe my idea of what a body that's about to maybe pass, or leave us or become disabled, maybe my read is totally wrong, at least for this individual body, because a lot of signs are showing he's more balanced than I am, even though all signs of like, whatever we want to call it, like illness, disability, possibly even leaving this world. So it's really altering even the level of resilience that can exist at what I previously thought was the edge of what a body can endure before it has to leave this plane. And I'm going, whoa, that's a pretty important piece of, or several pieces of feedback information from my sense of whether we're calling it balance or just ability to still be living a worthwhile life in a body is. I'm not sure if you can understand what I'm saying without seeing the reality.
It's like he's leaning out over the edge and then leans out even more, comes back and says, yeah, I'm okay, Mum. And then leans out even more. And you're clutching your pearls going,
yeah,
what are you doing? And it's
it's like having a son that's a Red Bull, like
base jumping.
Yeah.
His
and
health
he's
is
going,
base jumping.
My set point isn't that thrown off. That's him saying that. Yeah, my body's going through these extreme things, but it's not just spirit. It's not just like a metaphysical thing I'm reading, although it is partly that. There are like actual grounded points of like relational connectivity and even life signs that are there to say like, no, like, don't even think of giving up on this yet. Like, there's a lot happening, but this is a body exploration of his. I might never know in this lifetime why, but all I can do when we can't do the meaning making part, like the horse measure. Why is he doing this? What is he trying to say? Why did this happen? Where did this come from? Did I do this? Am I the cause of this? We might never have those answers, but we can come back to the physical. Firstly, the physical of my own body, because that's where things are going to emanate from my own experience, and then to feel into the physical of the relationship. And when I keep feeling back into it, it's, he's a base jumper, but his set point has not gone off the cliff. There's just extremes of his body that have come off, and he's quite balanced still, and still glowing, and still bright in his eye, and still looking for connection, and still, so who are we to say what body explorations, what form they take, and what information and feedback loops come back from these various explorations? They're not just in the dimension of tricks and sticks and balls and targets and payoff and shoulder yield. Those aren't just those are above ground experiments. But again, I say I'm in the underworld right now, and there's a lot of information we can learn from the underworld, or we could even say the off the cliff world, that become relevant information for the above ground. The most important of which is how much can we stretch our dynamic equilibrium in a very basic sense. But there's a whole bunch of others that I probably won't know until later. I'll tell you this much, though. I'm going to be a lot more resilient around
Health.
near death events and health crises, because that was never my forte. I was always more in the bodies that move realm, the bodies that express through movement realm. That was my expertise. And now I'm on a little journey in the, what about when bodies are, I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is kind of like a disability politics, and rethinking what a body that is not in its optimal form, what function it still has, what purpose it still has, what value it still has, what well-being it can still experience within a less than perfectly expressing body.
We have seen a less well horse that is physically healthy and not dealing with disease than in a sick Ivan. It's almost like as if by design, he is here to lean you out over the edge of the cliff and say, you can be here. It's okay. And there is well-being here also.
Yes.
I have a horse at home who's 25 or 26, came to me when he was 19, and his body is built like a BMW. It's body made wrong. Not his fault. And much of it is based on development and overuse. There's scars on his tongue, arthritis on his feet, sheath tumor. He's got a totally collapsed abdominal sling. And all forays into working with him from myself and others who also had access to essentially the most compassionate and skilled academic work in hand instructors in Europe, if not the world. They actually had direct line of access to these practitioners who worked with this horse in a previous home. And that didn't work. It's not like dressage is Jesus. Through dressage, everything is possible. It's not the truth. And I came to the realization, not for this horse, with this horse, that his body doesn't need my fixin'. And his body is in balance, out of balance.
Yeah.
And what I'm supposed to do is give him the dignity to leave it there with him to tend to on his own. And we're watching very carefully as his physical decline has very noticeably begun. Watching very carefully. I was having discussions with my groom today about that we're both watching him very carefully for signs of concern or discontent or barometric pressure drops. Does that affect his joints? Do we see it in the behavior? Things like this. We're watching him very carefully, but his body is perfect in how out of balance it is. It is perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Yeah. He is perfect. Fuck all those sleek horses with pre-Olympic level fitness who never get a snotty nose and never get a speck of dust on their behind. They don't live life. Caleb has lived more life than most horses you would ever know. And his body is perfect because it's navigated all of that. And he's come through at the end a little worse for wear. But fuck, man, he shows up every morning and he's like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Where's my hay? Where's my food? It's another day on the yard, right?
Well, and, you talking about non-localized consciousness, and coming back to the idea of what value, if we're even going to look at other bodies through the lens of value, what value does a body who's going through that have? Well, I don't want to have to justify value of another body. It's not for me to say. But if I were, I would say to think what is being uploaded to non-localized consciousness in terms of what a body can do and what well-being a spirit can find within a body that is not functioning by our current paradigms for evaluating bodies.
That's right.
what it feeds back into that non-localized consciousness is so important, just like the neurodivergence of the world, just like, you know, any number of bodies that are expressing themselves in ways that are outside of the normalized paradigm.
I call it
They are of value.
I call it coercive care. There comes a point where even healthcare upon a disease can become coercive.
Of
And
course.
it's
Not even
it does,
especially.
especially. And all of this corrective training upon horses we deem dysfunctional, we say, let me fix that for you so that you can be more in balance. When you're more in balance, your mind, your heart, your spirit is more
Yeah,
in
I'll
balance.
tell you how it's going to be. Yeah.
And I say that's not entirely the truth, because he is an autonomous creature with his own multiplicities
That's
and
it.
intersections. And
Yeah.
what he was actually getting from us is every time that we were trying to correct his body, we're saying, it's wrong. Let me fix that. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. And he's saying, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with me. This is all I've got. Leave me in peace.
Yeah.
Make me right. Make me whole.
Yeah. Accept me as I am.
Let me make myself whole.
Let there be quiet around me. Don't bring me all your noise.
Yes.
You know, it's so much noise. And I'm aware that like my former gravitational center, as it was at the beginning of this 4-month period, was probably a lot of noise from him, psychic noise. Even when I'm in my house minding my own business, I'm sure my horse could still feel my psychic noise. And so that is my journey from this, is to, I'm not going to say, I have to respect my own urges too, you know, and of course I'm concerned. And of course my heart rate gets up. And of course my mind turns over and over and over again, worrying. But again, we're 4 months in and time is wearing on my, you know, the chronic stress is wearing. And so I have to get really real about my own body. Darling, speaking to myself, darling, you have to come up with other ways of relating to what's going on here. And part of that is the letting go and trusting the autonomy of this other body. Even if the unthinkable happens, even trusting that that process
is part of
all as it should be. And so that's the lesson here. It's really, it's radical acceptance, you know, it's radical witnessing of bodies. And all of us, on whether the dominance paradigm or the so-called compassionate paradigm, however you want to label this other end of the spectrum, we're not that unalike if all we're trying to do is coerce bodies into being a certain way. Even if it's the nice guy coercion versus the tough guy coercion, it still forms a coercion. And so the meeting point between two bodies, when we're going to influence another body, whether it's through our energy, our bodies, our gear, our medical interventions, our supplements, our food, anytime two bodies come into meeting, it's on us to remain curious about how much we're trying to make this body be something other than what it is. And if we're unsure of how to read that, my answer is always, where is the resistance? Become a student of resistance, resistance in all its forms. In this case, resistance of a body being unhealthy when I want it to be healthy. When you experience radical or even not radical resistance from another body, that is where it is your job to back off and be curious. Not back off and go away. Stay with it. Well, I guess I've quoted this before. It's Donna Haraway's title of her book, Staying with the Trouble. I love it. Stay with the trouble, but go slower there. Pause. Keep your balance on each foot and be ready for all possibilities, even if it's the best of modalities. Even if it's the Lockie Phillips modality, even if it's the, you know, currently I'm doing acupuncture with Ivan and I'm loving it. It's so fascinating. It's my first experience doing it with a horse. I've had it on my own self before. I have great belief in this, but even that, go gently, you know, go gently through the intervention and remain curious about what we're seeing come out. And that's the work, is to just remain curious where there's intervention, continue to try, but don't commit too fully. Don't put one foot off of the other into the other too quickly.
It's It's spectacular. The way
Mm.
I love the way your brain works. That's
You
no
know it's
secret.
mutual. Yeah.
It's no secret here.
Yeah.
I am going to round out the episode now,
I think we've said all we need to say.
and I'm watching very carefully how Ivan tracks wherever he tracks at this time.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
holding space.
Thank you.
I'm tired of saying the word holding space because it's becoming a little trite, and I'm like, do I have any more space to hold? I'm not sure, but
a lot of holding.
it's a lot of holding space.
Yeah.
But I am holding space for that. But
Thank you.
let me ask you this to finish. Shannon, is there anything I didn't ask you today that you wish I had asked you?
If you did, there's time in the future.
You'll be back. You'll be back if you'll
Yeah.
come back. You'll be back.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm so excited to see where this work takes you now. This off the cliff, Underworld.
That's it's I can feel the pull of it strongly. That's where it's going. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that Underworld work, which is not, it's not darkness.
No.
It's just
depth.
expanded, it's depth. Yeah, an expanded perception. And
Yes.
it's an ongoing thing. And it's one that is horse-led and body-led.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you'll find me at the bar on the Lido deck. I'll be there in the Underworld having a sundowner. You'll find me there and I'm sure.
I was picturing the ballet bar, but it's another bar you're
no,
speaking of.
another bar entirely. You'll find me at the bar down there. Shannon, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Lots of love for you, okay?
Same.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Emotional Horsemanship podcast with Shannon Beahen. If you would like to connect with Shannon and become one of her select and very lucky students, you can go to humminghorse.com. That's HUMMING horse.com. I've also provided her website in the show notes of this episode. If you'd like to join me for Homecoming 3.0, you can also find that link in the show notes of this episode. Please consider subscribing to this podcast and downloading the episode and sharing the episode with your friends. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening. I hope that you are driving safe, mucking out easily, or resting well as you listened to this. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.